My brothers-in-law broke into my vacation home and were arrested. They'd been charged with breaking and entering, destruction of property and communicating threats, all Class 1 misdemeanors. I've refused to drop the charges. I might do so if I'm fully paid for the damage they caused. They were still in jail as of Saturday evening. I assume they're out by now. Things had settled down, at least I thought so. Haven't seen or heard from my sisters in over 6 weeks. My parents went up to the house for a week and had a good time. David, the property manager I hired, has worked out great. He's done a couple of repairs I asked him to do and I've given him a list that he's going to work on. He usually sends a photo or two of wildlife or a sunset to his clients every week, was kind of making me want to get up there. Friday after Thanksgiving my bills went to my vacation home. They used an angle grinder to cut through the chain on the driveway gate and damaged the gate in the process. They tried to get in through the front door, ruined the lock set and gouged the door badly. They finally got in through the utility floor door and a locked internal door. They also broke into the barn, I'm not sure why. When they went out through the front door where they were met by sheriff's deputies and David. David gets notifications from the camera system when there's activity. He saw what was going on and called the sheriff's department. According to David, the Bills tried to bullshit their way out of it, but the deputies didn't buy it. Breaking into an empty house is a pretty serious thing up there. Usually it's meth heads who ransack the place and hawk everything. When the Bills were arrested they freaked out big time, were saying how they were going to beat the hell out of me, etc. Not smart to do in front of cops. David and the sheriff's office tried calling my wife and me to see what we wanted to do, but we were spending the day with her parents and had left our phones in the car so we could be in vacation mode. So they booked the Bills on everything, which is what I would have asked them to do anyway. Bills called their wives from jail who of course freaked out. They called my folks, tried to call me, they're blocked, tried to find a lawyer up there to arrange bail, not easy to do given that it's a rural area and was a holiday weekend. Older sister has zero cash and her cards are maxed out, so if they made bail my middle sister would have had to pay for both husbands. I know they were still in jail as of Saturday afternoon. We didn't check our phones until late Friday on the way home from the in-laws. There were a ton of calls and messages from my mom, dad, David and the sheriff's department. Talk about ruining a great day. I was in such a good mood till I looked at my phone. My wife read through the texts and listened the messages, read them out to me, and by the time we got home I had some idea of what was going on. I put my brain back into thinking mode, tried to get past my anger, failed. Called David and got the rundown on what had happened and how bad the damage was, resulting in more anger. I ended Friday by calling the sheriff's department and telling them there was no misunderstanding. The Bills had absolutely no right to be on my property and I wanted to press charges. I didn't call my folks back. Barely slept. I waited until Saturday afternoon to call my folks. They were both pretty rattled about it all, my mom in particular. My sisters had browbeat them into telling me I should tell the cops it was all a mistake and that I wanted the charges dropped. I refused flat out. Told them there was no way I'd do that until I spoke with an attorney and also not until I was paid in full for whatever it will cost to fix everything 100%. My mom was crying hard by the time we got off the phone, which, of course, made me feel like shit. My dad suggested it was time for a complete start over but also said he thought they needed to pay for the damage. I haven't gone up to the property yet. There's nothing I can do and I'll probably go nuts when I see the damage in person. The photos are bad enough. I'm hoping to tomorrow or Wednesday, but my job isn't one I can just wander off from for non-emergencies. I've left messages with 2 attorney friends asking them to recommend the right lawyers to go after my sisters and Bills. I don't know what I can do exactly, but I'm hoping to get restraining orders. I have all the texts they've sent me, that might help. I'm strongly considering suing them for the money they made renting the place. I don't care about the cash, but it will help make them as miserable as possible. The gloves are definitely off at this point. A couple of side notes, Bills had no idea I'd hired someone to keep an eye on things or that there are cameras there now. My parents knew but hadn't told them because they knew it would just give my sisters a reason to drama up. There are signs on the property stating it's being monitored with cameras and no trespassing signs though. My wife has completely had it at this point. I don't blame her, she's been more than patient about it all, but she reached her limit and was not shy about letting me know. She told me it's up to me how I deal with this, but that she thought they all needed to be taught a hard lesson. Older Bill likely won't face any repercussions at his job over this, but Middle Bill has a security clearance so he might. I'm hoping that will be motivation for Middle Bill to pay for the damages himself immediately. David, the caretaker, has an interesting background. I knew he was friends with some of the deputies, figured it was because they were all locals. I was wrong. He was a cop in a big city for years, was shot on duty and afterwards decided to quit and move to where his parents had retired. He has some PTSD over it all. His dog is a certified service animal and is usually with him. I know law enforcement people tend to hang together. I guess that's how they became his friend group. I don't want to see or speak with these a-holes for the rest of my life. I know this is in direct conflict with my overwhelming urge to make their lives as miserable as possible. Oop, a lot of people have said I should have been hard ass about all of this from day one. I've avoided it because it would have stressed out my parents and I hate this kind of drama, but F it, they're stressed out now. Update 1. I think the corner has been turned on this crap. Thursday afternoon I got a courier delivered envelope at my office. In it was a signed letter from both my brothers-in-law and a cashier's check for $5,000. In the letter they made what I have to say was a really sincere apology. Among other things, they acknowledged breaking in, acknowledged it was wrong, said the $5,000 was to pay for the damage and that they'd pay more if it cost more than that. Also said they'd stay away from the vacation home unless my wife and I specifically invited them. They also asked that I do what could to get the charges dropped as soon as possible because they both could lose their jobs and that they'd agree to a restraining order or whatever else it took for that to happen. There was more as well, all conciliatory, but that's the gist of it. To say this was a shock is an understatement. It was, obviously, a total 180 from their past behavior. I'd already made an appointment with an attorney to see about suing my bills over the damage and to try to get a restraining order. I called him and told him what I'd just received and he agreed to meet with me at the end of the day instead of next week. Told me not to deposit the check. We met for about 2 hours. He ended up recommending the wife and I do a settlement and mutual release agreement with all 4 of them, sisters and bills. He said if we went after them, via a lawsuit, that we'd almost certainly win, but that it could take 2 years or more, there would be sizable upfront legal fees and that we might never see any money. He also said we could keep the $5,000 free and clear even if we didn't let them off the hook. He's drawing up the agreement, it won't be ready until Monday. The agreement will include what's essentially the civil equivalent of a restraining order. I'd already asked my property manager to work up a bid to get the damage repaired. I called him after the meeting and asked that he get me as close an estimate as possible ASAP. Got that Friday. He thinks it will take around $4,000 to fix everything. Most of that is for the front door. On Friday my attorney contacted each of the bills, told them what we were proposing and advised them to get their own lawyers. They both agreed to it. The middle bill told him they could afford to either pay for the damages or pay for a lawyer, but not both, and they figured a lawyer wouldn't make any difference given that they really had no defense for what they did. His biggest concern was if the charges could be dropped. From what I can tell, they're willing to do anything, sign anything to make this all go away. My attorney also called the DA's office on Friday to discuss dismissing the charges, got the name of the prosecutor and left them a message but has not spoken to them yet. He thinks they'll dismiss the charges because the bills are paying up and they have no priors, but then again he's not a criminal lawyer. Also said I should be prepared to drive up there Monday or Tuesday and tell the prosecutor in person that I want everything dismissed. He's also advised me to continue to be no contact with sisters and bills especially for the next 6 months, and that it will be really important to follow the terms of the agreement when it comes to future interactions with them. I'm guessing that the bills' change of heart is due to them having figured out what's at stake for them, and it's going to cost them in legal fees and fines and so on. There's also the, highly unlikely, possibility that they could go to jail for up to 120 days, and as I've mentioned, one of them has a security clearance for his job that could be at risk. So this is their Hail Mary pass to keep their normal lives. This isn't a perfect resolution to the situation, but at least it will get me past the legal and financial parts of the shit show that I've been in for the past few months. I doubt I'll ever have a civil relationship with any of them ever again, and that's fine. What I want most at this point is to close this off, get on with my life and never speak to any of them again. I'm exhausted from this. Wife feels pretty much the same way. Kind of a side issue, but getting the written apology was, weirdly, a huge moment for me. I wasn't expecting that ever, but apparently it matters to me quite a bit. The money doesn't feel particularly important at this moment. I'll damn sure take it though. Also, I'm pretty certain my middle sister and her husband came up with the money. The cashier's check is from the credit union of the company he works for. Once things are signed, I plan to make one more update, probably just an edit to this post. I'm sorry for being so pedantic. Writing these posts has helped clear my head and the feedback has really helped. I truly appreciate everyone's comments, insights, and support. And I really hope none of you ever have to go this kind of nonsense. Oop, thanks for your kind words. To be honest, when I finally got home Thursday night I cried from relief thinking this might all be over. I'm not going to discuss the settlement with my folks until it's signed by everyone. My sisters, bills can if they want to, but I'm not, it's between me and them. Update 2.0 December 7, 2023, Thursday, Tuesday morning I met with my attorney, went over the agreement. Changed a couple of minor things and he sent it to my sisters and brothers-in-law. It included a requirement that they pay my attorney's fee, about $3,000. They weren't happy about that and tried to negotiate it away, but he told them they either accept it as is or there would be no deal at all and we'd proceed with suing them for the money they got from renting out the place, wear and tear from renting it, repair costs from their break-in, emotional distress, lost income from having to deal with this, attorney fees and whatever else we could. He also told them I would push hard with the DA's office to prosecute every charge. Short version, they came in and signed. I wasn't there. I'm told it was a pretty tense environment, that the middle bill appeared to have taken charge and that at one point he told both of my sisters to shut the hell up or he was walking away from the whole thing, making his own deal with us and the rest of them could all go to hell. They provided another cashier's check for $2,500, claimed that's all they had. It's close enough that we're going to accept it as the final payment. Attorney also told me that everyone was very cold and curt towards one another, but that they all managed to keep it together long enough to sign and left without making too big of a scene. I drove up to the vacation house early yesterday to check out the damage and meet with the DA's office. Seeing the damage made my blood boil. It was so senseless. I was so pissed that I was ready to eat the cost of repairs and do everything I could to ruin their lives. Tried walking it off, failed utterly. Ended up calling a good friend who was kind enough to stay on the phone for over an hour letting me spew and vent. He eventually got me back to focusing on the bigger picture of putting this behind me and getting on with my life. Honestly, I'm still not sure that's what I want to do, but I settled down enough to get some food in me and I felt better. After lunch I went to DA's office. Hadn't made an appointment and had to wait a while, but got to meet with the assistant DA, who's got the case. Short version is that since I don't want to prosecute and the bills have already paid for the damages, that they are willing to drop all the charges except trespassing, which in this case will be a Class 2 misdemeanor. The bills will have to plead guilty and pay whatever fine the judge sets. I'm also told that if they fight the trespassing charge or ever so much as fart in public up there, that it would go very poorly for them. It helped that the bills didn't resist arrest. If they had, none of the charges would have been dropped. I also went by the sheriff's office to thank them for getting there so quickly and everything. Wanted to thank the deputies personally, but only spoke to the dispatch person. And I tried to meet up with David, the property manager, but couldn't get hold of him. A couple of notes: the agreement includes a no contact clause. Basically, if any of them show up where my wife or I are, or the other way around, whoever got there last has to leave immediately. No contact except through attorneys or other mutually agreed upon third parties. They get to keep whatever they made from renting the vacation house, my big give, unless I have tax consequences which they will be responsible for. And we release each other from all other liabilities up through the present. There's more to it than that, but those are the high points. Wife and I will sign the agreement later today. After that I can't talk about most of this, but I can talk around it. I think this is my final update regarding all this nonsense, but I'll respond to comments if I can. As I've said before, posting about all of this and reading folks' thoughts and responses has been really helpful and has probably been key in my being able to handle this in a relatively healthy way. So thank you all again. Thanks for the kind words. I had a hard time not being vindictive, but right now I'm glad I wasn't. If they cause more drama down the road I'll probably regret it, but if they full out the agreement, that won't happen. The family dynamics are, like you said, pretty much effed. I've only told my parents that we're trying to work things out, nothing more. They may or may not be okay with the way things will be moving forward, but I had to do what was best for my wife and I. I'm guessing that my sisters have told them a very slanted version. That's just one more turd I'll have to swim around. Really, the agreement is more a formalization of how things have been for the last few months. I know it's not how my folks wanted things to go, but I'm pretty happy with it. Update 3. Thought it would be worth an update for anyone who's interested. Unsurprisingly, my oldest sister and brother-in-law have filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. While I don't care about what happens to them financially or otherwise, they've also managed to drag my parents into their mess, which I'm not happy about. At the start of the year, my Bill's oversized customized Pride and Joy truck was repossessed. Pretty embarrassing for him, I'm sure. Happened at work. This was their breaking point. Without the truck they have to share a Kia my parents loaned them, and they can barely fit in it with their 3 kids. Financially they're effed. They owe at least $125,000, probably more, on high-interest credit cards. They have zero equity in their house, and have a couple of personal loans that I'm pretty certain they got under false pretenses. They have loans on their jet skis, ATVs and trailers. They also owe a chunk of money from defaulting on the truck lease. They hadn't made any payments on their credit cards or loans in months and were behind on their house payments as well. They got out of the lease on my sister's massive SUV late last year. They were upside down on it as well, so had to come up with cash to do so. They also had to pay an attorney, the fine and court costs for my Bill's trespassing charge at the vacation house. And they owe my middle sister and her husband money for bail and their poor tie-in of the damages to the place. As I've mentioned before, my folks have never been financial wizards, but they have at least been generally responsible. They're retired, their home is paid off, and they live off of Social Security and pensions. Altogether they get more than they spend. Minimal savings, just an emergency fund. Turns out my folks emptied out that fund, cashed out their small IRA, $20K, and gave it to my sister. That let her catch up on the house payment and cover the negative equity on her car lease. But now literally every bit of savings my parents possessed is gone. Plus my parents have been paying for their groceries for several months and continue to pay the insurance on the car they loaned my sister. According to my dad, my sisters worked my mom for weeks to get her to fork over the money. They'd worked on both my folks at the same time for a while, but my dad flat out refused every time. Eventually mom caved. She was worried that my sister would have to move to a hovel in some backwater town and that the kids would be barefoot and eating dirt. Dad's not happy about it, and to say there's some tension between them right now is an understatement. But they'll be fine. I was pretty disappointed when my parents told me all this, but I wasn't surprised. It sucks that they emptied out their savings to help, but I kind of get it. The way the bankruptcy laws are in our state, by getting caught up on the home loan, my sister should be able to keep the house. I tried hard not to say how I felt about this, and my sisters mostly succeeded. Really, I'm way more pissed about this than I should be. The worst part for me is that my sister and Bill could now contact me and my wife without any real fear of repercussions. The only penalty the no contact agreement has is that if they violate it we can go after them for the money they made from renting out the vacation house and related damages. Since they filed for bankruptcy, that's now not an impediment for them. I'm hoping they'll leave us alone, but who knows. Folks also told me that my middle sister and her husband have hit a rough spot and that he's not currently living with her and the kids. Just a guess, but I imagine he's had it with the whole family dynamic that caused this nonsense. Not directly related, but on a brighter note, I've spent 2 weekends at the mountain house since the start of the year, once with my wife and once alone. Both times there was a lot of snow. It was incredibly beautiful and relaxing. Very therapeutic. The place also has good internet service now, thanks Starlink, which is nice. Plus knowing that I can count on David, the property manager, to keep the place in shape, ready for us to visit and to help if we get snowed, and eliminates most of the stress in owning it. My folks have used it a few times as well and get along great with David. If they start up again, I do indeed plan to get a restraining order. In fact, my wife made it clear to me she expects a very hard approach to any BS from them going forward, which I agree with, of course. Update 4. My folks worked through Mom giving my oldest sister her IRA and their emergency fund. Altogether Mom gave her $45,000. According to Dad, once Mom realized how much she'd been manipulated, she got as mad and upset as he'd ever seen her. I think she had a moment of clarity. She and Dad ended up calling my sisters on a 3-way call, and according to Dad it went south pretty quickly. Sisters were gaslighting them, Mom lost her cool and ended up ripping into them hard. There were lots of tears and eventually both sisters hung up. Mom really just wanted both sisters to acknowledge that they'd put her and Dad in a risky financial situation. Typical blow up, I guess, but not the kind of thing that happens in our family. The next morning my dad called my older sister and told her he'd be picking up the car they'd loaned her. She tried to argue, but he told her it wasn't up for discussion. He got an egg, her friend, to take him to her house as soon as he hung up and drove it home without talking to her. Sister called and went off on him, said lots of nasty stuff, which of course hurt him. But at least they have the car back. Dad also told me something that left me dumbfounded. For the last 17 years they were giving both sisters a grocery allowance that was up to $500 per month. What the effing F? I'd thought I had a pretty good handle on where their money was going, but clearly I was wrong. This started back when I was going to grad school and living at home. My sisters asked for the money because they thought it wasn't fair that I was living at home rent-free, and then it just never ended. In any case, my parents cut them off. Unsurprisingly, my sisters weren't happy about it. Who the hell gets an allowance from their parents when they're in their 40s? Because of all this, my folks and sisters quit talking for a while. Don't know if they've resolved everything, but they appear to be on speaking terms again, though my folks aren't having them or the kids over. I'm in don't ask mode, it's their business. My folks are using the vacation home fairly regularly. Currently they're there for a 2-week stay and will probably make it 3. Unfortunately, my wife and I haven't spent any time there lately other than me having made a couple of day trips to check on it and drop off some supplies. The property manager I hired, David, is still taking good care of the place. Side note, middle sister told my mom that the oldest sister had been making over $6,000 per month renting the house out and that it had been going on for nearly 3 years. Pretty certain she didn't declare the income, so that's like grossing $8,000, $9,000 per month. I will forever find the galling. Oldest sister and Bill still have their house. My attorney checked up on their bankruptcy case. The court converted it from Chapter 7 to Chapter 13, which I believe means they have to pay back a lot more of their debts. Middle sister and her husband are still separated. I don't know if my middle Bill has had any issues with his security clearance because of breaking into the house. I do know he's still with the same big defense company. At my parents' request, I've been working on putting their house into a trust. They want me to manage their affairs as they get older and keep the house safe for my sisters. I'm working with an attorney, but it's not done yet. Folks have asked me to be the trustee and have also given me full power of attorney. The best part about the last few months is that my sisters, Bills, have left us alone and have stayed away from the vacation home. Wife and I are really happy to be back to our normal lives. Hope everyone else's lives are going great. The folks have actually started saving again. They were already spending less than they get each month, and they're also saving the $1,000 they've been giving my sisters each month. Yeah. Every time I write one of these updates I do too. One of the reasons I haven't done so in a while. Thanks. My parents are good. They tell me they're happy, they have plenty to do. One of their ongoing things is volunteering for Meals for Wheels. That's actually why they have the Kia. They bought it from an older neighbor who'd driven it for the program for years. It fits just the right amount of insulated boxes for a couple of people to distribute in a few hours. They didn't like using their main car for deliveries, said the car started smelling like yesterday's lunch after a while.